proposal was part of that. And so we're here to listen tonight. I know a lot of you have sent in questions already that will be addressed in the presentation. And of course, we're always taking feedback via email, phone, and through our website.
On this particular project, just want to say thank you all for coming. We've been taking a lot of feedback already from residents, schools, park packs, and businesses on this potential project here. So we're looking for that continued feedback and new feedback from people who are either hearing about this for the first time or want to make sure their voices are heard.
Chicago, really since COVID, biking in Chicago has grown faster. It has doubled, and it has grown faster than any big city in the entire country. And responding to that, CDOT as a department has been working to continue to expand and connect and enhance our biking network throughout the city, and all parts of the city, in all neighborhoods, really working with all wards. And Alderman Lawson mentioned kind of looking at kind of filling in or expanding the bike network in this neighborhood. And we've been really collaborating with many of the wards in this part of the city to look at ways to kind of fill in the existing bike network. Really with a focus on better east-west connections, helping folks get from the river all the way to the lakefront and connecting to all the great amenities, parks, lakefront trail, and everything else that the neighborhoods have to offer. We've been working on installing a number of these projects that you'll hear about tonight, what we call neighborhood greenways, throughout the city, but especially on these east-west connections on the north side. And at the heart of it, what they are really just ways to provide folks with quieter, more family-friendly options for getting where they need to go. Whether that's neighborhood destinations, getting to parks, getting to school, getting to the zoo even. And on Wellington, like a lot of these other projects, these projects are really aimed at formalizing how a lot of people are really already using the street. Amanda will get into some of the detail, but we know that hundreds from our own counts, traffic counts, 24-hour counts, we know that there are hundreds of folks biking on Wellington. And they're doing so because their other options really are Belmont to the north and Diversey to the south, which have considerable amount more cars on them, much less comfortable to be biking on, especially if you're looking for just a quiet way to get around. And at the heart of our proposal, again, Amanda will get into it, really what we're proposing to do is just through paint and signs, that's all, better organizing the street, making everyone more predictable to one another. This is really taking what is already happening on the street and providing more organization to it. And what we've seen every time we've implemented projects like this, we've seen crashes for everyone go down on the street. We've also seen through our own counts and observations, compared to the nearby busier arterial streets, what we've seen is that more women and more children are biking on these quieter streets compared to the bike lanes that we have on busier arterials. And we also see that the people that are biking on these streets are doing so much slower than they are on those parallel arterials. Again, this really reinforces the fact that people are just looking for quieter, more comfortable ways to get around that doesn't involve biking on a busier street, something like Diversey, something like Belmont.
Thanks everyone, I'm Amanda Woodall. I work in the Complete Streets team at CDOT, and I am here to walk us through the Wellington Neighborhood Greenway project. Many thanks to everyone who's already been thanked up until this point, and I'm just gonna dive into the project. More folks I want to thank are everybody who submitted a question in advance. What we've done is taken all of those and done our best to incorporate the answers into the presentation itself. We feel that you'll be able to get the answers that you're looking for. So we do look forward to diving into the project area. A lot of folks, when they hear that there's a bikeway coming, they get a very specific idea in their mind of what that looks like. Maybe one example or two that they can think of from that they see ordinarily. But what we're talking about tonight is a neighborhood greenway. And we have over 72 miles of neighborhood greenways here in Chicago. They're usually found on low traffic streets, lower stress to busier streets. They formalize areas that are already popular for cyclists. So the objective isn't, if you build it, they will come and bike here. It's, hey, we're aware that this is a popular route that people are already using because they feel that it is safer or more comfortable, or that it directly helps them to access the destination they're trying to reach. And folks are already there. So what we're trying to do is create better organization, better clarity, and better predictability for everybody who is already using this space. They often include traffic calming, and most relevant to this particular project is they connect people to schools, they connect people to parks, they connect people to retail corridors. We're really excited to move this project forward. So why Wellington? We had a number of questions come in asking why this corridor in particular. So the first reason is that it was recommended in the Lakeview-Roscoe Village Master Plan in 2023. It has been vetted previously as a select corridor for the community for access to all the things that I just mentioned. We know that it is already a popular route for people biking. We did bike counts in October of last year where we saw approximately 400 people at the busiest segment, which is of course right outside here of Advocate, Illinois, Masonic, on the segment between Sheffield and Clark. So it's already a space where we have hundreds of people traveling on bike every day. It connects, as you can see here on the map, it connects to schools, it connects to parks. We have the Lakefront Trail, we have the CTA Brown Line, which is just steps from here. I took the CTA to get here today, thank you very much. And obviously the hospital is a major employment center, and we have multiple retail corridors. So just want to leave this map up for a second so people can drink it in. Your eyes probably falling on the green stripe down the middle, that's Wellington. But if you take a look at the blue lines, the streets that are highlighted in blue up here, those are all existing bikeways that this corridor will connect to. And another thing that I'd like to be able to point out, oh, the mouse isn't showing on here, but is these gray rectangles that you see along every street. Those represent traffic signals. And that is a very important part to the planning of all of this, right? People being able to cross major intersections with the safety, knowing that they have a controlled intersection, that they're gonna get a green light, and that they're not gonna have to, go Frogger style across that lane. More reasons why Wellington. It's the only non-arterial street that connects all the way through the neighborhoods, from the Lakefront Trail to the Leavitt Greenway and Clybourn, which is just very, very short distance south from the 312 River Run, which connects to the Manor Greenway, which connects to the North Shore Channel Trail, which you can take all the way to Green Bay Road, right? So these are major connections for people to be able to get east and west. There are traffic signals, as I just mentioned. If you look at every major intersection on the corridor, there is a signal where people will be able to know that they're going to get an opportunity to cross. And again, as we've said before, it's a family-friendly, low-traffic alternative to Belmont and Diversity. Now, some people ask the question, what do you mean by low traffic, right? Because they walk outside the street, they see plenty of cars, you see plenty of motor vehicles traveling right on the corridor outside here. So just for example, a street like Belmont is, according to IDOT, the average daily traffic is 17,700 vehicles per day in a segment just north of here, right, north of this portion. On Wellington, it's a unique corridor because we do have the institutional use of the hospital, so it is a little higher in this segment, but most of the segments are between 2,000 and 3,000 vehicles per day, mostly residential, mostly commerce. So that's what we're talking about, compared to 17,000 vehicles a day. That's why we consider this to be a lower traffic corridor.
So what is the amount, if you subtracted out what the amount of cars were in this area of Wellington, if you add that back in, is it still 2,000 or does it significantly increase?
We can talk in more detail at the end, but yes, it does significantly increase. It's higher here because it's a higher use, it's a unique corridor, and that's why every single segment on this corridor is designed based on the width of the street, based on the traffic levels on that street, the speed of vehicles, and everything else that we know. Each segment that I'm going to walk through the different design types for each. is established based on CDOT standards for those existing conditions. And also just the context around it. We know that a residential street is going to behave much differently than a street like this segment where we have all these parking lots, we have transit, we have so much activity. Couple of key observations that we want people to just keep in mind as we go through these slides. Again, we see about 400 cyclists at the busiest point, and that was a fall count. We were able to do some spot counts at other intersections flanking the area where we saw more like 460 in the lower traffic corridors of Wellington just yesterday. So that's not even coming through the major retail or the major institutional space. I see you have your hand up. I'm happy to talk it through, but I would really love to be able to get through all this content, and I'm happy to talk.
I'm just asking, you're proposing that there are 400 bicycles a day and only 2,000 cars a day? That's what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Right. Okay.
We can talk more in detail, but I'm trying to qualify it based on the locations where we take the counts, because as we know, residential areas are much different from high traffic areas. But at the busiest, on a non-peak day, work day, in October, we're seeing hundreds of cyclists on this corridor. And so what that demonstrates is that there's a need. There is a need for people to have organization, to have signage, to have traffic calmed as much as it can be, and to have everyone be aware of what their responsibilities are and where they're supposed to be. This is a response to a popularly used corridor. Another thing to keep in mind is that the average vehicle speeds that we do see on this corridor are less than 20 miles per hour across the board. Average 24 hours, okay? This corridor right here, average speed is 16 miles per hour. I'm not saying, that's this segment in front of the hospital. I'm not saying that's all times of day, I'm not saying that's every single vehicle. Of course we get people speeding at night, but in general, this is what we are seeing. We're looking at the data and spending time thinking about what makes sense. Another point is that we do have, as we said previously, this is the only east-west route that goes from Clybourn and Leavitt all the way to the lakefront. And what we do see is that in the existing locations that are one-way, that about 20% of the people biking are already biking contraflow on those segments. And it's not because they just feel like scoffing the law. It's because it's the only major connection that they can get, east or west, on this low-stress corridor, without having to add more intersections, add more turns, get out into traffic. So that's another reason why. It's not that we're trying to instigate something new. It's that we are trying to formalize and increase safety for everybody who's out here so they know what to expect. Some other key project notes, just to keep in mind, again, as I go through all this content. Number one, there will be no changes to on-street parking from this project. No parking spaces are going to be taken away. We're not consolidating parking. We're not relocating parking from one place to another. All of the existing on-street parking is going to remain as is. The only thing that's going to change related to that is that it will be striped off, okay? Which is something that we do in part to help calm traffic because a visually more narrow lane naturally slows people, naturally brings more caution. But I just want everybody to know, if that was your question, if that's one of your concerns, if you're concerned about being able to park near your home, no parking is going to be removed. Also, there will be no new concrete installed as a part of this project. As Brad said previously, it is going to be all paint and signage. There will be no new one-way streets for vehicles. No, if you currently drive on Wellington, everywhere that you go to access right now today, you will still be able to access all of those locations in a motor vehicle. None of that is being changed or taken away. And as I said previously, all the designs are based on street width, vehicle speeds and volumes, and the surrounding land use and context. So, this is a slightly more developed version of the same map we were just looking at. And what this does is, by the way, it's 2.5 total miles, the corridor. And we have 3 different types of bikeways designs. And you can see in the legend at the bottom, they're defined. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through every type, like every segment that we're going to have. We're going to talk about what the design looks like and how it works. And I'm going to give some call outs to some location-specific questions that we know came in. So we're going to start with shared lanes, which is the corridor right out in front here at Advocate, Illinois Masonic. This is a photo actually taken from not far away. It's up at Berwyn and Broadway, but this seemed like a very good example of the same type of street, right? It doesn't feel very neighborhoody. It doesn't feel like a greenway. There are lots of parking lots. There is a transit station here. You've got buses. Not that we have that.
Is that the same width as Wellington?
It's the same. It depends. I mean,
No, it's not.
it's not the same, but it's the same design, and it's a similar context. So all that you're going to see, there's a larger view of it, right, is exactly what you see currently right now out on Wellington between Sheffield and Clark, which is a center line striped. You're going to see the parking, which is currently for almost entirely for emergency management, emergency vehicles, first responders, striped off so that the lanes are at their appropriate width for motor vehicle traffic to move at a safe speed. And you will see these green-backed shared lane markings on each side of the street. They are placed in locations that help guide a cyclist to where they can hold their line to stay out of the door zone and to remain safe while traveling the corridor. That is the only change that you can expect to see on this corridor. Here's a couple more examples. These are more of a neighborhood context. You may have seen them in other locations, but it's a very simple upgrade. And the purpose is to be able to indicate to drivers that you should expect to see cyclists and to help cyclists to know where to position themselves on the road so that they're visible and so that they're not at risk of a door and crash. As I said before, no parking is to be removed. Now, some of the questions, I really would love it if we could just wait until the end. I'm happy to talk one-on-one about people's questions. If I can just get through the content.
Folks, we're gonna have a civil, respectful conversation because that's what we do in this community. We're not gonna shout out, we're not gonna talk over each other. We have differences of opinion in the room, that's obvious, and that's fine. But we're gonna get through the presentation and then we'll be speaking with everyone at the end who has questions. Okay? Thank you.
If the concern is about not having the information available to you in the future, all of this is available on our website. If you go to it's chicago.gov/complete streets or chicago.gov/projects, this entire presentation and all the information about the project will be available as soon as we finish with this presentation tonight. So thank you very much, and feel free to email us if you're not able to access that. All this will continue to be available to you. Another point that I just wanted to raise, which has been raised to us by multiple people, is the fact that Advocate Illinois Masonic is a level 1 trauma center. We have many ambulances that are accessing the space. They're parking here. They're coming to the space. One of the requests that we had was to do a data analysis on bikeways near other level 1 trauma centers in Chicago. Of the 6 others that we do have in the city, there are 2 that have bikeways that are adjacent to their emergency services. That's Stroger and Rush. And we have a variety of different types of bikeways. We looked at 12 years worth of data, so we were able to see before things were installed and after things were installed. We do not see any indication of the increase in crashes at those locations. We do see a slight decrease in cycling, bike-involved crashes at those locations. We look very seriously at this. We're in a place where this is the corridor that we're on, and we believe that these are the most appropriate facilities. And something else that I mentioned earlier that I didn't remember to get into, and I'm going to get into it now, is the question of why Wellington? And some people had suggested Barry, and some people had suggested Oakdale. And something that is a concern with both of those is, number one, Barry is a wonderful street, but it does terminate out into this very complex intersection at Clark Street and Halstead. It comes right out into a 6-way intersection, and being able to design that as a space for cyclists to be able to navigate a multi-signal turn and be able to stay on the greenway is extremely complex. So unfortunately, while it does have a lot of connectivity, and a lot of people do bike on Barry and probably will continue to do it because they find it convenient for whatever their destinations are, that's why we did not choose Barry, because it does not have the full connectivity that we need without that very complex stressor of that intersection. Oakdale was another one that was suggested to us. The first challenge with Oakdale is that it does not connect all the way through. It stops at Lakewood, And it also dead ends into Ashland, and there's no way for people to be able to get across. So if you spend a lot of time on this side of Ashland or on this side of Lincoln, you can see why Oakdale would be a choice for biking, but it just simply doesn't have the connectivity. It also does have a pretty rough jog at Halstead that's not a controlled intersection. And during high traffic times, it's quite a bit to navigate that intersection on a bicycle. I know it because I've done it many times. So I just wanted to call that out. Sorry that I moved past that. So we discussed shared lane markings. I'm going to move on to the section line, just like on any other street. If you need to park on the other, opposite that, in this case, the left-hand side, if you need to go and pull into one of those parallel parking spaces, you would put on your signal, look for a cyclist, yield to them oncoming, and then proceed across the bike lane to park, just like you would on any other one-way street that doesn't have this facility available. The purpose of this, again, is to make sure that you are reminded that people are going to be oncoming, and that you're aware that they're coming and that we're able to share the road and everybody knows where they're supposed to be. We do encourage you to communicate as much as possible using your signal so that anybody coming behind you knows what to expect from what you're doing. Here are a couple more detailed questions, or more detailed images. On the left, you see a picture. This is over on Rockwell, and this is an example of a location that has diagonal parking. And one of the reasons why I wanted to show the image is because we know that between Ashland and Southport is Alphonsus Academy and Center for the Arts, which is a school. And they also are a church, and they have back-in angled diagonal parking on that section. So just one thing that I wanted to mention is that this is certainly not the first location where there would be a Contraflow bike lane facility on a segment that has diagonal parking. Similar to what you see in the image here, the Contraflow lane will be on the opposite side of the street from the diagonal parking, so we feel just fine with that. Again, it's a design that's been done many times. So I wanted to talk about that. And also just mention school pickup and drop-off. People who are familiar with school pickup and drop-off know that for about 15 to 20 minutes every weekday, it can become a very organized chaos of what happens on any street near any school. It does appear that they run a pretty tight ship over there at Alphonsus Academy. Their drop-off activities are happening on Greenview, and they're also happening in the enclosed parking lot off of Oakdale, just south of their building. So those activities are occurring not on this greenway. Of course, we know there will still be lots of traffic. But the point is that we already have so many people biking on this corridor. We want to elevate safety in that space so everybody knows where they're supposed to be, and everybody has that reminder to check their blind spot, to check their mirror, to look for a cyclist before they pull over to do whatever activity it is, whether it's picking up or dropping off a child or pulling into a back-in angled parking space over there by St. Alphonsus. I wanted to make sure that I called that out. Another question that somebody had regarding the Contraflow was, what will the entrance to Lincoln Park look like? Because the bikeway is going to go all the way over to Interlake Shore Drive. And the short answer is there will be no change to that intersection other than having the neighborhood greenway come up to that space. There is a shared, currently there is a shared curb ramp where bikes and people walking can access the park. And there's a planted median there. There are curb bump outs. Lots of traffic calming is already in place over there. We do not have any plans to change any of that intersection. People will have to continue to share that space in the way that they have, and similarly to all the other park entrances, the majority of park entrances that we do have here in Chicago. Here's some signage, just some examples of the different types of signs that go up on a Contraflow bike lane. We want to make sure that everybody knows that they're going to be expected to be sharing the road. At traffic signals, you can see that the sign on the lower right, bikes use ped signal, so that's the expectation because there isn't necessarily going to be a signal head that's facing the direction that the cyclist is. Just a little example, we also do install bike scale stop signs at all of those intersections. That's what, it's tough to get a good photo that shows the smaller scale, but these are the types of signs that we put in for Contraflow. So now I'm going to move on to the final typology, which is advisory bike lanes. These are planned between Ravenswood and Ashland, and between Southport and Sheffield. And I've got a bunch of images on this. What you can expect to see is something like this from a motorist perspective. So rather than having a center line, what you would do is treat this the same way you would treat any other residential street that doesn't have a center line. They tend to be typically pretty narrow. You tend to typically drive down the middle of them. And then when there's an oncoming vehicle, you slow, you move to the side, and then when you pass, you move back to the center again. That's the typical expected behavior on a two-way residential street. Here's another example of that. Two cars are approaching each other, and what they do is they move over across that striped line to pass one another, and then they move back into the center. Something, good rule of thumb to keep in mind with any of these facilities is that the dashed lines, they work the same as they do on any other lane marking on the city. So if you're driving on Ashland Avenue and you got a white dashed line on your lane, you know when it's safe, when you've checked, you can legally move over that line, change lanes. You can move across it. It's not like a solid line, like a lot of other bike lane signs are, right? So the point is that this is a shared space where the only difference that you have as a motorist on this segment is that you have a striped line to remind you that this is a greenway. You should expect people to be biking here, and there are people biking on every single street in Chicago, actually, at all times of day. But this is a reminder that you're coming through a neighborhood, it's a residential street, you're gonna check over your shoulder, you're gonna signal if you need to. If there's a cyclist in that advisory bike lane, yield to them, let them pass, and then move over and let the oncoming vehicle come. And then you move back into the center again. If there's a time when you have higher traffic, then everybody moves over and you make the space. And that's the way that this design works. It is shown to reduce crashes across the board in the locations that we have installed. And it also shows that on these, we have seen that drivers provide a little bit more space to cyclists when they're passing them on these facilities. But it's because they're aware and because there is a space demarcated there. So that's advisory bike lane, that's how it works. Here are a couple more photos of that. And we also do have a video that was put together by the Safe Ambassadors team. So if anybody would like to scan this on your phone, feel free to watch it a little bit later on. Please don't start it now. But it does a pretty good job of breaking down live what the expected movements are on an advisory bike lane. So we've talked about the full length of the corridor. We've talked about the 3 different types of bikeways we can expect. We've talked about location-specific questions. We've talked about parking. We've talked about concrete. How all these different facilities operate. The next steps are, there's ongoing agency coordination, of course. Resurfacing and patching. Crews will go out and find the locations where the plans are. Fill them in with asphalt, do what needs to be done to improve those. And then the pavement markings and signage are anticipated to go in late summer, early fall. This image that you can see here, you can see that this is actually, our crews are nimble and they are able to install these without having to put up no parking tow zone while they're doing the installation. So this is a photo actually of one of these being installed live so that the impact is less on neighbors and we're able to get things implemented in an expedient way. Just a couple of links for everybody to keep in mind. Chicago.gov/complete streets is our webpage, it's like our microsite for our program. It talks about all of our efforts for traffic safety. If you have questions about data, if you have questions about crashes by mode, please, we welcome you to go there, look at the reports that we have, look at what we're learning. Chicago.gov/bikeways is a direct link that will talk about not just these 3 types of bikeways we talked about tonight, but everything else that we do have going in, different things that you might see around the city. If you have any questions on how they work, it's a great resource. And then you can also look at our individual projects at chicago.gov/CS projects. There's a nice search box there. You can browse through, you can peruse through, and you'll be able to plug in Wellington and go right to the project page to get copy of the presentation tonight, the posters that we've provided, and, you know, other meeting materials. And that's the end of the presentation.
So,
We can do that, or we can just have people come up and talk to us.
No. Questions and answers.
alright, so I see multiple hands, and again, we had questions submitted in advance, so if something was answered in the presentation, please don't ask it, please. And then, so what we'll do, you want to do like 15 minutes of hands, and then, like I said, CDOT staff will be around the room and they can have one-on-one conversations. Does that sound good? Yep. Great.
Thank you.
All right. Where do we start?
I'm gonna let you pick.
All right. No, because I know these people. Go ahead.
How about all the way in the back? I see you, yep, green trim.
Yeah, I just want to start by saying I'm a huge fan of this pipeline. I'm a resident and I would be
Stand up and be louder.
sorry. I would be super excited to see a pipeline like this in the neighborhood as a resident who bikes around and usually just has to use only school in Roscoe. I would be really excited.
Thanks for your comment, I appreciate that.
I was just curious. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. That was just me.
Oh, I thought you were just.
If there was a reason why the bike lanes aren't like on the inside of the cars and why they're on the outside.
So I think what you're referring to is barrier protected bikeway design, where we will put the bike lane up against the curb and move the parked vehicles out further into the street. There are contexts in which that is very appropriate and very feasible, such as business corridors, where we have a lot of people pulling in and out all day, on much higher traffic, higher speed corridors where more separation is the goal. We don't really have the width to do that type of separation on any of these greenways, and it's just not the appropriate design or context for these particular uses. Ma'am with the yellow floral shirt, you have been emphatically raising.
I have a question for you about, would you consider making the bike lanes smaller? Because they look awfully wide there. And when you have two cars trying to pass each other and two bikes, it looks really tight. And most of the streets you showed were all one way.
That's actually, let me just revisit this photo. This is a two-way street. You can see there's parking on both sides of the street.
But it's too narrow with the two cars, the two lanes.
But the point is that it's a dash lane, and you have the ability to move over across that dash lane when you need to pass. And many, many Chicago streets are set up like this, just with no pavement markings at all, and it's kind of every man for himself. You have people driving, you have people passing each other, and you have cyclists that are using those corridors because they are lower stress, because there's, reaches the destination they need to get to. And so this whole purpose of this design is to remind you, to cue you as a driver.
But it would make people feel more comfortable if the lines were more inward towards the cars.
The more narrow lanes actually serve to calm traffic. They actually promote, this is an engineering fact.
And is this a done deal already? And we're wasting our time?
The project is fully designed.
I'm asking if it's gonna be implemented, whether we like it or not.
The plan is for it to be implemented this year.
Oh, I see you have this.
Okay, let's see.
So much for community input.
Yeah.
Yes, our Alderman, what do you think of a community input?
Yeah, exactly.
Why are you having community input?
Bullshit.
So, I don't know that either one of us has signed off on the project, or if CDOT isn't looking for it. We take community input to change and make tweaks to projects all of the time. I think one of the criticisms has been that that CDOT will come in and put infrastructure in without talking to the community, and we're not gonna let that happen, right? So we wanna talk to the community, we wanna hear questions and feedback from everyone. They have a timeline, and the work is paint and signage, so it's not the same level of disruption or contracting and things like that, but
Speed bumps?
I would say, there are no speed
No new
bumps.
speed
No speed humps going in here, it's literally signs and paint. And so, Scott, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I think we're here to listen to what that feedback is. And I don't know that either one of us has really given this 100%. I have concerns about the hospital, right? I'm gonna go look at Stroger and Rush, right, and see what that looks like. I know there are concerns about the schools. I have concerns about no turn on red. So we're here to get your feedback still, and want to continue to have that conversation.
Yeah, I would just say too that we have seen this presentation. Even though the hospital is not in the 32nd ward, it's pretty far down this way from where Leavitt starts this project. It's a big concern for us because we have a lot of people that use ambulances every day to get here. And if you don't think that that creates a conflict with how many ambulances go in and out each day, it does. And that's something that we have to be concerned about. So we want to make sure that we take the input and that, as you go further east from here, the pickup and drop off at the 2 schools that we have is handled correctly. We have similar type of lane that was done on Leavitt, and we have issues with cyclists that do use the Contraflow Lanes, but don't stop on some of the major arterials like Armitage. So it is a concern when you see people doing that, and I've talked to CDOT about that, and I've said we need more education for the cyclists that are using this, because they're also, some of them are endangering themselves by going through major signalized intersections against the flow of traffic. Let me finish, please. So there's a lot of education that has to go into this as well. There are pedestrian issues that we're concerned about. There has to be education of all the pedestrians in the area, people that don't have bicycles going contraflow in their neighborhood right now. We have to make sure we get the education out on that as well as to what's happening. So for us, I think what we're taking today is the input and making sure that any particular designs, if you think this is just done as it is, it probably isn't. There are things around the hospital I think that need to be taken care of. We've talked to the church. We've looked at Southport. We had issues with Southport when all the changes were made at Southport as well. So we're cognizant whenever you make changes to a street, you have to educate people and also make sure that whether it's pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, or vehicle traffic, that everyone's concerns are taken into consideration. But I think what we're going to do is we'll go back to the questions. I would just ask to be respectful of people's questions and respectful of their concerns in this room. Trying to drown somebody out when they're asking a question is not appropriate. I think I've seen so many of these meetings go downhill over the last several years, ones that we've had, where people are drowning out other people or saying that people who are concerned about vehicle traffic or pedestrian traffic and that aren't bicyclists should be shamed into doing something. Let's put a stop to that. If somebody's asking a question tonight, let CDOT answer it. Let's not try to shame people for having serious concerns about anything that is affecting their daily commute. Thank you.
You, sir, in the black polo shirt.
Yeah, the pictures you're showing, from my perspective, are very deceptive because they're not showing the real part of the east side of Wellington and west side of Wellington. If you go back a picture, and one more. If you're saying that's a one-way street, no, I'm sorry, there's one more, I think one more.
Are you talking about in the one-way?
Yeah, the one-way.
Okay, let me go back up here.
That is not the width of Wellington up by between Leavitt and Ravenswood. It is a lot narrower. So the concept of having a reverse lanes, you barely get a car in there. I mean, you can't get, this, based on this picture, you can literally get 2 cars if somebody pulls over to the side. You cannot do that in that area.
This is the image that I had that best described the facilities that we were planning. So the purpose of this image is to make sure that everybody understands what the pavement markings are going to look like and how to use the space. There are other Contraflow bikeways in Chicago that are much narrower than this. I know them because they're in my neighborhood and I use them. And they are useful. We have over, let me just make sure I get this number right. We have over 25 miles of Contraflow bike lanes in Chicago. So it's not like this is a new design, and the width of the roadway is a major factor in all the design selection that we do have. I appreciate the comment, and I understand, and I'm sorry that I wasn't able to show you a photo of what it would look like before it is installed. But this is the best that I could find to be able to educate folks on how it's supposed to work. Brad, did you have something that you wanted to?
I know there was a question earlier about bike lane width, and sir, your question was getting about width too. So I just want to clarify for everyone, all of these designs we're looking at, especially this one right here, all the widths of the lanes, whether that's the width of the bike lane, that's the width of the travel lane, that's the width of the parking lane, all of these are not haphazard. These are standards developed not only by CDOT, but these are standards developed by the state of Illinois as well as through federal guidelines. So everything, whether it is the width of the bike lane, those minimum widths there are dictated by those standards that we adhere to in every single facility throughout the city that looks like this, or others meet or exceed all those standards. So I heard the question earlier and then that question, so I wanted to make sure that was clear in terms of how different widths are determined.
One more follow-up, if I may. You said you were concerned about, on Berry, you can't have the reverse lane going down Berry because there's a 6-way stop at...
The 6-lane stop in any context is going to be a complex design. It's going to be high stress.
Right, but well, there's one on Wellington also, right?
But it's straightforward. When the Wellington corridor goes straight through that intersection. At Berry, it jogs through. It would dead end at Halsted and Clark. You would have to take a slight right onto Halsted, onto Clark, and then make another left across Clark to continue on Berry. It's a complex intersection. I know everyone says, why not Berry? Why not Berry? It's a great opportunity, but that particular issue just makes this more complicated and more dangerous, honestly. You and the background